to green light it. And, Rod Serling was very, very lucky to pitch Twilight Zone at a moment when the network executives were open to something that inventive and that daring. And that can come around again. It just takes the right person who has the power to greenlight something.
I wonder who he had to pitch. Was it? Do you think it was Paley?
Well, it wouldn't have been Paley. I mean, ultimately he would have
approved it,
given the green. Yes,
in those days.
But back then, William Dozier was one of the executives he was working with, and under him was an executive named William Self. They were very smart men, and they really liked what Rod was writing. But even so, Rod had to do a number of pilots of the Twilight Zone before the final one sold. The first one he wrote was something called The Time Element, that was about a man going back in time to Pearl Harbor, and he wrote it as a Twilight Zone pilot. It was an hour long, and CBS shelved it. And then it was made as an episode of Desilu Playhouse because the producer of that show, Burt Grant, heard about it. He made it as an episode of Desilu Playhouse. It was very popular, and that convinced CBS to give Rod another chance at a pilot. He wrote one called The Happy Place. That didn't get made. He wrote another Twilight Zone pilot called I Shot an Arrow into the Air, which he used as a title of a different episode, but this script never got made. And finally, he wrote Where Is Everybody, which was the half-hour pilot that did get made. And that was the one that convinced CBS to greenlight the show. But it took a lot of perseverance on Rod's part.
I felt so sorry for the Walter Koenig and his family.
Yes.
After hearing the episode of his son.
Yes. And it's these people who play some of the beloved characters on television.
By the Walter, by the way, played Chekhov.
Played Chekhov on Star Trek. Yes, and but these people, they're so dear to us because we get to know them on television and they feel like family. And I, of course, got to know Walter personally. Here in my career and in my life, he's a dear, dear man, and you never wish any kind of tragedy on anyone. But certainly these people seem very close to us and very dear to us. So, our hearts go out to him.
You're bringing your wife Elaine out to the event?
Yes, of course. And Elaine, it's interesting because Elaine is also a writer and a director and a producer, and she's currently setting up 3 features, juggling those, and a web series. So it's very fun. She just got a director and a producer attached to one of her projects, so we were very happy about them. The fun thing about this director, he did a film called The Line with Ray Liotta that did very well recently on DVD, and Elaine wrote this script for him, specifically, this new script, and she gave it to him. He read it that day, and that afternoon he said, yes, I'm in. I want to do this. And so it's very fun. In Hollywood, you often wait so long for things to happen, and so when something happens quickly, you really cheer.
The legendary Stan Lee will be out there.
Yes, he will, and he's amazing. When you meet him, he's I guess in his 80s, but he's still very vibrant.
Lots of energy.
Oh my God, yeah, just an amazing man. When you think here's the guy who came up with Spider-Man and Thor and Daredevil,
Iron Man,
amazing.
Fantastic Four, Avengers, X-Men,
phenomenal, just phenomenal.
He did the Incredible Hulk too, didn't he?
Yes. So this is just an amazing man. I mean, when you think about the number of immortal characters he's created, he's sort of the comic book equivalent of Charles Dickens. When you just look at the amazing stories and characters he created.
Well, I wish I had all my old comic books.
Oh, I think we all do.
I threw them all out. I had all the old ones.
Yeah, me too.
All of them.
Me too. Well, when I was researching the Twilight Zone Companion, I interviewed an actor named Don Gordon, and he remembered as a kid buying and reading Superman #1 and Batman #1 and throwing them out. So
what would they be worth today if they were in pristine condition?
I think the first Superman comic just went for $500,000.
No.
Yeah. So so that was an expensive error on his part.
A friend of mine's father has a Honus Wagner baseball card in St. Louis, worth, he said, $1.5 million.
Wow. Holy cats. Well, it's funny because I'm auctioning off some of my Star Trek collection later this year, and I have a panel, a little view screen from the original bridge of the Enterprise. It was used all the way from the first Star Trek pilot to the last original Star Trek episode. It shows the Enterprise side view and top view. And it was one of these things where I just had it for a while. And I thought it's time to let someone else treasure it, and we'll see who bids on it. But it's very interesting when you find out who the top Star Trek collectors are. They're, it's fascinating how that world works.
Who's Norman Corwin?
My friend Norman Corwin is, well, first of all, he was the great writer of radio. He was so famous that when World War II ended in Europe, they said to Norman, we need you to write a 1-hour drama on what it means that we've just won this war, what it means and what it's going to mean, and it aired on all the networks simultaneously with no commercials. It was called On a Note of Triumph. And Norman was the guy that both Ray Bradbury and Rod Serling wanted to grow up to be. And the amazing thing, considering the fact that Norman Corwin was born in 1910, is the fact that we just celebrated his 100th birthday.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, and even more amazingly, his brother just turned 107, and his dad made it to 110.
Whoa!
So those are good genes, George. And
great genetics.
Yeah, and it's funny because they had all these celebrations on his birthday, and he said if I'd known that I was going to be so honored on this day, I would have aged more rapidly.
Is he active?
Yes, amazingly, he just had a book come out this year, and he's been teaching at USC, and we're going to be taking him out to lunch shortly. He also wrote a movie called Lust for Life that starred Kirk Douglas as Vincent Van Gogh. He was nominated for an Oscar for that, and they just screened it at the American Cinematheque here in L.A.
He's probably up listening to you right now.
You
never know.
You never know. You never know.
What's new on Zikri.com?
Well, we have actually one of the most fun things on Zikri.com is that you can watch the entire Star Trek episode with George Takei that I co-wrote and directed and executive produced that came out just a year or so ago.
That's the one you promised me a starring role, and I never got called.
That'll be the next time, George. But
it's in the mail, right?
Yeah, and I have blogs, and I have all sorts of scripts up online that people can read, and all sorts of really fun things. So Zikri.com is always fun to
Let's
check
take some phone calls when we come back, Mark. You're always fun, and let's have a little fun for the rest of this half hour that we've got with Mark Zikri. Questions about the Twilight Zone, sci-fi shows, fire away. You're next with us on Coast to Coast AM. After Dark is the official magazine of Coast to Coast AM. You get it every month. How do you subscribe? You can call this toll-free number, 1-888-261-6392. That's 1-888-261-6392. Or go online at coasttocoastam.com. Comes out every month, full color. It's a great magazine. Now, the mentoring of people, they're all over the country, all over the world, aren't they? Yeah. Well, Elaine and I teach classes, and we mentor anyone who wants to be a writer or a director or a producer anywhere in the world. And so we have students in Australia and France and everywhere, and it's great fun. It's great fun because, people often think that they have to come to Hollywood to make movies to really get going on things. They don't. They can do it anywhere now. That's super. Let's take some calls here, Mark. We'll pick it up and go to Gates, North Carolina. That's where it is. First-time caller. Hey, Rob, go ahead.
Hey, it's a pleasure to speak to both of y'all tonight.
Thanks, Robbie.
Thanks.
Just a quick question for you. From a creative stance and a production stance, what do you think about and what goes into some of these ghost hunting shows that you see on TV as far as, if they were writing anything or what goes into that, something like that? Well, reality shows have sort of a different way of doing things than like a fiction show, because with a fiction show, I'll just have an idea, I'll sit down, I'll write the script, then they'll, shoot it. with reality shows, they kind of I think they get suggestions from various people. They're looking for where to send their crew. They're looking for stories that might be kind of different from each other, but kind of still be like, for instance, with a ghost hunter kind of show, they want to create a spooky atmosphere, so they'll listen for what they probably listen to Coast a lot to get. I think Coast to Coast actually is an inspiration for a lot of TV shows, both fictional and non-fictional. So it's much more that they're looking for reality that they can kind of turn toward their own purposes. But from friends of mine who work in reality TV, a lot of it is much more fictionalized than you might think. There's it's very little of reality TV is actually really real. And it's sort of like wrestling used to be in the old days, where it was some people thought it was genuine and it wasn't. But so that's how it works in sort of a lot of the ghost hunter things, where they're just kind of creating an atmosphere and then packaging it a certain way to give that spooky feeling. So a lot of the evidence and things of that nature may or may not be actual. Yeah, I'd take it with a grain of salt, but again, there's probably a little kernel of truth in there, but still, buyer beware. I understand. Well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate y'all taking my call tonight. It's a pleasure listening to y'all. You're
Thanks,
very welcome, Rob.
What's new? What else you have on your plate these days?
Well, I just I have a friend named Steve Altman who's a novelist and a screenwriter.
Oh, I know Steve real well.
Yes, and we just we wrote a script called Controllers. That's this it's a science fiction show the people who secretly control everything. and so that's there's a management company called the Pitt Group, and they love this script, and they're going to go out wide with it. And so we're meeting with them on Friday, but it's very exciting. It's a script I really love. It came out very, very well. And so it's going to be a lot of fun to run with that project.
Super. Steve's a good person. Tell him hi for me.
I will.
Louisville, Kentucky. Mike, you're up with us on Coast to Coast. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, George, how are you?
Good.
Good to speak with you again. I talked to you last time when Richard C. Hogan was on.
Sure.
And really enjoyed it. I enjoy every show. Mr. Zerkry, I wanted to ask you something.
Sure.
One of the things that I've been doing since I've been retired is sort of amateur sci-fi and fantasy writing.
Cool.
But I haven't, published anything. I've got, but some of it's been circulated around among family and friends, and even a couple of literature professors, and I've gotten good reviews.
Oh, great.
On my work. My work is something similar to their short stories, and they're almost like Twilight Zone episodes.
Well, that's great.
Pardon?
Well, that's terrific. It's a lot of fun to write Twilight Zone kind of stories.
I almost feel like I've been inspired by Rod, and I feel like he's sitting right beside me, helping me out. But I know when I was a kid, Twilight Zone was my favorite show. I wouldn't miss an episode of it for nothing. But my main question to you, what would be a good way for me to go about getting these out there?
Yeah.
Either I was thinking about maybe combining a bunch of these short stories into a book, and I even have a title for it. I was thinking about calling it The Dimension Beyond.
Sure. There's a number of different ways to get them out into the world, and I think it's a great question. Among the ways you could do things, science fiction publishing is one of the more accessible genres. So there's the World Science Fiction Convention. It's held every year. There's also something called the World Fantasy Convention. The book editors, the book agents, and many of the most famous authors go to these conventions. You can meet them very readily. And when you meet an editor in person, it really kind of helps make it much easier to publish. There's also science fiction magazines. There's a magazine of fantasy and science fiction. There's a number of these magazines that publish short fiction, short stories. And so one can actually submit to these. The editors of those magazines also go to the World Science Fiction Convention and the World Fantasy Convention. So if you Google those, you can find out where they're being held this year, and you can go to them and you can meet these people. Another thing that